every member and the trustees of the Neuroaid and the Research Foundation. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Aruna Sharma, former Secretary to the Government of India, Mr. S.K. Sharma, former CAG, Mr. S.R. Sinha, formerly from the NHRC, Mr. and Mrs. Anil Goyal, Mr. Goyal, the Secretary, Culture. We have Dr. Suvarsha Khanna, who is the chairperson of the Dharamshila Narayana Hospital. We have a very young and special guest who is due to arrive very soon. Once he comes in, we would welcome him also. That is Mr. Sachin Chamaria. The Neuroaid and Research Foundation began with the motive of supporting people who need rehabilitation, either due to a neurological disease or an injury, or sometimes even birth defects, who will need sustained and prolonged therapy to ensure that they return to as close to normal life as is possible. One of the major concerns with rehabilitation has been it is a very prolonged and time-consuming affair, and people find it difficult at times to have an access to the service, the awareness about the service itself, or sometimes they have a problem affording the treatment that can be quite prolonged. So that is how this organization came up. A group of us decided that we need to create more awareness in preventing many such happenings, and also create centers where we would be able to afford good quality care, so that if people could not return entirely to the normal level of efficiency, they would at least be able to get as close to that as possible, so that they became enabled and empowered. In keeping with the spirit of this evening, the national anthem will be played in the silent format. So can I request you all to kindly rise for the national anthem, which will be in the silent format, please. I get a feeling that our people of the sound and light console took me too seriously when I said it's going to be a silent anthem. But since we have stood up, why don't we all sing the national anthem? Janagan man adinayak jaya he Bharat bhagya vidata Punjab Sindh Gujarat Maratha Dravid Utkal Banga Vindhya Himachal Yamuna Ganga Uchchal Jaladi Taranga Tava Shubha Name Jage Tava Shubha Ashish Mange Gahe Tava Jaya Gata Janagan Mangal Dayak Jaya He Bharat Bhagya Vidata Jaya He Jaya He Jaya He. Though the national anthem was sung by us once and played once, it was not intentional. But I think it conveyed a very important point, that all of us sitting here could actually rise from where we were sitting and were able to sing the national anthem and could hear each other sing the national anthem. So I think we would all appreciate how blessed each of us is to be able to do exactly what we wanted to do. So I think it is our responsibility to ensure that people who have any kind of an impairment, we support them so that that impairment doesn't become a disability. We have a short video presentation. We are trying to capture what each of us thought when we wanted to form this particular group, and the vision and the mission of the group. Can I have the AV, please?
A lot of attention all over the world now is focused, and I'm a part of a WHO group in Geneva that's looking of how to promote neurorehabilitation. So whether it's your memory, your cognition, your walking, which is locomotion, your speech, your vision, hearing, 80% of people, if they're recovering from head injuries, spine injuries, meningitis, strokes, would not have recovered enough to get back to society, get back to work, and really get back to normal life. So we decided as a group of concerned doctors in this field that we should set up a charity. The mission of Neuroaid Foundation, it was set up, is to get neuro rehab for all.
The seed for NRF was sown several years ago when our chairman Dr. Pratap Reddy of the Apollo Hospitals kept focusing a lot on healing, touching lives, compassion. So it got me thinking, and when I saw the neurologically affected patients, especially in the poor patient ward, I knew that neuro rehab is what we have to do. So that is how NRF was formed, and we are committed to developing one of the best centers in the country for the poor and needy.
Several years ago we all realized people with either spine injuries, accidents or other kinds, who sustain either stroke or other kind of neurological problems, they need a lot of physiotherapy. But many of these people didn't have either the access, the awareness, or the ability to afford such continued treatment. That's what we thought we need to sort of bring this in.
So hope is definitely a very key thing in such a mission. And NRF wants to renew the hope in the patient that they will get back. The cells, their brain cells will revive, and that they will restore their function and they will restore their normal lives.
Basically, internal medicine offers a holistic approach. Majority of the stroke patients either have coronary artery disease, diabetes, or high blood pressure, so multiple medical problems or peripheral vascular disease. So that is where during the acute phase, in association with a neurologist, we take care of all the acute medical problems. Once the acute phase is over, that is where the internal medicine role becomes bigger, because that is where rehabilitation starts.
Initially, it is a question of just physiotherapy, occupational therapy being a kind of a fine physiotherapy, talking about finer movements, and these therapists, they work to get the range of motion going in all the joints.
So when you look at the mission, our primary mission will remain the maximum recovery that's possible from any kind of either a birth defect or an injury or an illness which has led to the current state of things. So with physiotherapy and planned therapy of other kinds, we make sure that whatever recovery is possible under the circumstances, we are able to reach that level.
I would like to say the entire focus of the neuro rehab team is to serve the patient, the family in a way so that the patient is brought back to society as near normal as before. Because here we all feel we spend so much of time in rehabilitating that patient and getting little by little better the patient. You see every day you see some little change. It is so fulfilling. This is what is best about neuro rehab. You feel so passionate while you are with the patient, and over the time you feel so connected because it is ultimately bringing them back to their families, their homes and their lives.
So I think this is a field, and these are patients who can completely change their lives with rehab. These are people who primarily have cognitive disorders, they have incoordination, they have strength issues. There are so many complex things. And moreover, the pediatric group has also emotional deprivation and social deprivation. And that is what I think it will help these people most. And it will help them integrate better into society. And it will also make them feel that people care for them. I think especially for the pediatric group, I'm saying, children really respond to concern and affection.
I am coming to this NRF center from long time, and they are taking good care of me. Each physiotherapist is very sincere, hardworking, and they take lot of care of all the patient. And moreover, this is very reasonable. I can go to NTPC without paying any money, but I feel this is much better than that center.
सेंटर में मैं यहाँ करीब 8 महीने से आ रहा हूँ, 8-9 महीने से। यहाँ पे आने के बाद भी मेरे को काफ़ी अच्छा फील हो रहा है। चार्जेस भी और भी लेवल से यहाँ तो ठीक ही है।
To ensure that for the most minimum possible cost, without compromising on quality, we achieve the best results, which would mean high-end equipment, expertise in the form of very high-end physiotherapists. We have 9 physiotherapists at present, who are all well-trained people. And apart from the training, they are dedicated, they are very compassionate people. So that is what I think is going to be the benchmark in the long run, that we will achieve all this.
We made a small step with this foundation to try and create a facility, and we need more help from donors.
When communities come together, individuals or organizations who are able to support these causes, when they come together, the outcomes can be brilliant. As you could see, the main purpose was to renew, revive, and restore. And rehabilitation as a word translated from Latin actually meant being normal again, which is exactly what we are trying to do. We all understand that rehabilitation is a composite thing, but the kind of disciplines or specialities which are involved and how it is so important for so many specialities, in order to appreciate that, we thought we'd have a small panel discussion today with specialists from various walks of life. So can I request our specialists who are going to be panelists this evening to kindly walk up to the stage. I'll begin with Professor Anupam Sibal, who is a very senior pediatric gastroenterologist and also the group medical director of the Apollo Hospital. We have Dr. Mukul Verma, a senior consultant in neurology and one of the founder trustees of this organization. We have Dr. Rajendra Prasad, an eminent neurosurgeon and a spine surgeon, who has been working on preventing injuries and also been working on the first responders, training people to make sure people are transported properly. We have Dr. Kuldeep Singh, who is a plastic and reconstructive surgeon, who is very passionate about management of burns and the associated complications. He is also an active member of Trauma Care India, where the first responders are taught how to present and prevent complication of injuries. Is Dr. Prasad Rao here? Dr. Prasad Rao is a fine internist, a great physician, and the chairman of internal medicine at Medanta Hospital. Lastly, we have this young lady, Dr. Purnima Raman, who is the chief physiotherapist for the Olympic gold quest. Can you have the PowerPoint, please? Sorry. As we can see, as a society and as a country, we need to make sure that people who are disadvantaged need to be looked after well. However, when there is a large number of people with such problems, the governments can only do so much. So the civil society obviously has to step in and contribute what little they can. Sorry. I need to be rehabilitated. If you can see this, I understand there is about 26 to 30 million people with some kind of impairment in our country, and out of which 20%, close to about 6 million, have mobility disorders. So you can imagine the size of our problem, and that is the reason why organizations need to step in and see how we can help out. These are the developments with the physiotherapy, with the new machines coming up, and new equipment, and new experts and expertise. Sorry, I think there is a little... That is the kind of a rehabilitation center where many of us would probably want to be treated if we had a problem. And we are hoping that in the near future, we would create something of that kind of a quality in terms of equipment and expertise. That is one of the very advanced machines where it trains people on the gait after they've had major paralytic instances, etc. At this point in time, I want you all to put your hands together for this wonderful guy called Sachin Chamaria. Sachin, welcome. Sachin sustained a neck injury in a motor vehicle accident when he was in class 11. And the amount of effort and the support from the family and the ability to access the best rehabilitation in the world brought him to a level that is a fully functional adult who has completed his graduation and heads a very, very major organization. He speaks very passionately about his injury, the reason he got the injury, and how he managed to rehabilitate himself. So I think, considering the number here, I think we could have a louder applause for him, please. Now we have such an eminent panel of people. So can I begin with Professor Sibal? Will you briefly address the conditions in children where you think rehabilitation is essential for optimal recovery and performance? And what do you think about the availability of the services as we require?
Good evening, friends. Thank you very much, Subra Raji, for this opportunity. Now, I'm a pediatrician, so I'm going to really touch on the pediatric aspect. So, we produce 25 million babies a year. Subra told me that I have to speak for 3 minutes. So, in 3 minutes, 141 babies will be born in India. But sadly, 6 babies and children under the age of 5 will also die in the next 3 minutes. We have 3.5 million premature babies, and there is a correlation between neurological disability and prematurity. There's a correlation between low birth weight babies born less than 2.5 kilos, and neurological disability. The more premature the baby, the lower the weight of the baby, the greater the chances of a neurological disability. Given the fact that we have such large numbers with low birth weight and prematurity, we have a large group of babies and children who need rehabilitation. Surprising though it might seem that even though we are the third largest economy in terms of purchasing power parity, the total number of deliveries that actually take place in an institution are 79%. So which means 21% of babies are still born at home and sometimes not under appropriate supervision. If we just look at institutionalized deliveries, about 5% of the babies will not cry after birth. So their brain will suffer from lack of oxygen, birth asphyxia, which then has a bearing on many functions, from hearing to vision to cognition to being able to sit, to walk, to be able to have fine motor skills, to be able to feed properly. So if that is the incidence in institutionalized deliveries, you can just imagine what it is when the delivery happens at home. So we have a very, very large group of babies and children who need help. And then we have these inborn errors of metabolism where there's a genetic deficiency of an enzyme that codes for a particular protein. There again we see a lot of neurological problems. So there is a tremendous need. India at this point in time is saddled with a triple burden. So we have communicable diseases. Tuberculosis is still a problem, and we are all familiar with dengue. And then we get new kids on the block like chikungunya and so on. We also have this huge problem with non-communicable diseases, which is cancer, and everyone here in this room will have a relative or a friend who's been afflicted with cancer. This was not the case 15 years ago. Heart disease. We already are the diabetic capital of the world. So we have this huge burden of non-communicable diseases. But then there is this third burden that most people do not realize about, and that is about neurological disability. So you have individuals who had a stroke, who need rehabilitation after injuries. I just mentioned about babies and children. And one point that we quite often don't see as we walk down the streets, and this is very evident in Japan, if you go there, then you see the number of people walking with walking sticks. 12% of the Japanese population today is older than 75. India is a very young country, but this is going to change. By 2050, the number of people older than 60 will be more than the people between the age of 10 and 25. And the number of people more than 80 will be 3 times of what it is today. And 8 out of those 10 people will actually be living in the developing world. Add to this dementia and your inability to care for yourself. So we have this huge burden of neuro disability, and this requires attention, and this sadly in our country hasn't received the attention it should. So it's so nice that you've come together. I need to applaud the patrons, and we have Aruna ji here, the trustees, Prasad, Kuldeep, Rajendra, Subra, Raji, Mukul, who have worked tirelessly over the last 7 years to build this foundation. And I've seen how hard Raji works and how, with limited resources, this amazing team of 9 therapists soldiers on. And what they do, what is truly remarkable, is give hope to people, and Mukul alluded to that. It's about hope, because as has been said, there is no medicine like hope. There is no incentive so great. There is no tonic as powerful as the expectation for better tomorrow, and I think NRF does that, and does it in a small but a very powerful, meaningful way. And if all of us come together, I'm sure NRF is going to be able to do so much more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Prasad Rao, you come across a wide range of patients with so many different diseases and conditions which require the services of properly trained physiotherapists. And taking from what Anupam said, we all know that 1 billion or 15% of the world is going to be over 65 soon. That being the case, the kind of therapy that we require is huge. So would you be able to share your thoughts on the kind of conditions where you think recovery relies almost entirely on the level of rehabilitation?
See, majority of the neurological disabilities at the moment in elderly we see is stroke. Quite a few of them that die because of stroke, and those who survive, unfortunately, they end up in a more psychological, and also it involves huge amount of economic problems to the family. Because many times younger people, they are the breadwinners of the family. Unfortunately, once they are out of action, the whole family suffers. So that's the main problem with stroke and disabilities. Even other neurological problems as well. I'm not touching the accidental issue. I'm only talking about the medical issues. Majority of these patients do have either high blood pressure or sugar diabetes or peripheral vascular disease or some or other kind of cardiac problems. So that is where in terms of one needs to take care of these what we call risk factors. Unless you do it, the stroke patient, even if they recover, they can have another stroke, and then that could be fatal. So that is where we as an internist look at a holistic kind of approach towards the stroke patients. And then once the acute phase, which neurologists take care, within 4 hours they come and then they get the blood thinners and then clot busters to recover very fast and prevent the stroke disabilities. And those who come late, they take care during that acute phase. And once the acute phase is over, then we come in to control all the other risk factors which are there in each and every individual. And not only that, majority of these patients end up on tube feeding. That is, their swallowing reflexes are lost, so they need support through the tube to feed them. So nutrition is the main victim here. The patients tend to lose weight, they lose a lot of muscle mass, and that again delays the recovery of these patients. So one is nutritional aspect that needs to be taken care, and then of course the physiotherapy that has to be a continuous process, and then to help them, to rehabilitate them in the society, some kind of occupational training that is required. So whatever they can do with their disability, some of them are left with minor, some of them are left with major disabilities. So some kind of occupational therapy, so they can be helpful not only for themselves, because it's a psychological issue, they help themselves, and also of course they can support the family.
Thank you, Dr. Prasad. I think he highlighted the importance of prevention, proper management of blood pressure and diabetes, and will help to prevent many of these problems. And also he very correctly pointed out the impact on the family itself. Thank you, Dr. Prasad. Mukul, you've been treating neurological problems of a wide variety for a long time. Many of us know a little about the stroke, some know a little bit about the Parkinson's, some might know a little more about the other kinds of conditions like multiple sclerosis or myelopathies, etc. How do you see the value? I mean, what percentage of these patients you think will need long-term physical therapy to ensure they're at least able to return back to the activities of daily living?
Thank you, Subra. I'm happy to be here amongst friends, and So basically, good neuro rehab has a very important role to play in making making a disabled person be independent and function as much as he can independently. And this is studies have shown that there are various categories of disability, mainly from category 1 till category 5, and category 1 being a very mild disability which will recover on its own, and these people really don't need too much of rehab and they get back into society. Category 2, it's a little more severe. Category 3 are the ones who need rehab more, and studies have shown that these people will benefit very significantly from good neuro rehab. When I say good neuro rehab, it's a multidisciplinary thing. It's not, the neurologist has an important role to play to diagnose the condition, to treat some disabilities like spasticity and bladder problems and things like that. But the physiotherapist has a very important role to play because he will make the person acquire certain skills and certain strategies and then give certain aids by which the person can function more independently. But more important than that is there's a difference between disability and handicap. So disability may be there, but handicap can be removed if we as a society change. Because the handicap is when a person is not able to get back into society, to get accepted by society as being a normal person. And that's where it's an important role for all of us to make sure that we remove these barriers, the economic barriers that these patients have, the attitudinal barriers that we have towards them, and also to impress upon the government to make architecture in a way in which a disabled person can utilize everything in a very independent manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mukul. I think very well said in terms of the need of good strategy, the role of the various aids, etc. And I'm glad you brought up the issue on access to facilities, etc. We are in one of the prime auditoria of the capital city. And the only reason Sachin Chambriya is sitting there is because we didn't have a way to hoist him onto the stage. So I think it just emphasizes the point that we need to be a little more concerned about making places user-friendly with good access. Now, we discussed the point on the neurology part. Dr. Prasad, you're a neurosurgeon with a lot of experience on spine surgery, etc. You have played a big role in the Head Injury Foundation and also as a member of the trauma care and primary response teams. Can I just ask you to address how is it important to prevent complications from injuries, especially at a time when an injury has happened? How do you prevent that from getting complicated?
Thanks, Subra, and thank you all for coming here. You'll have to cough when you want me to stop, okay? Because there's something I feel passionately about and I can go on non-stop. And just one, they've started coughing already, so that's a bad sign. But I'll just, you made my job easier. I'll touch on what you asked me, but first on Mukul's point, United Nations has declared this as a human rights issue. Disability is a human rights issue. It's not just about, like when we go to patients, we say, "Sunte hain," and he says, "Listen, I have had a stroke, but I'm not deaf." And so please, so the way, the attitude of people and society, it's about getting them some dignity. And you mentioned the point. There are actually, we did a study, there are 10% of people will be crossing 65, and add to that head injuries, strokes, and other preventable diseases. That's about 10 million people, and add to that 1.5 million every year. I'm digressing a little bit. I just want to tell you that we are here today to create awareness. So if you've had any of the neuro disabilities, the lack of facilities, which we are going to try to address, 1 or 2 such facilities, public awareness. Even if you ask many people here, they are doctors, nurses, that wherein if you go out of Delhi, will you get rehab, and they won't know. So lack of awareness among healthcare professionals, amongst people. And then this All India Institute study which says 50% of people who leave AIMS Trauma Center, that was a few years ago, die of poverty. So there is that issue that we can't address, but awareness, creating facilities and infrastructure, and your being here will help greatly, and thank you all for that. And now to answer your question before you stop me, is about prevention. And we are all part, Kuldeep and us, we are part of this, this foundation, Neuroaid Foundation. We spend a lot of time on prevention. There is this new motor vehicle and road safety bill that's lying in Parliament for over 2 years just because the parliamentarians don't meet. Once they sign that bill, you will have to wear a seat belt front and back. You will have to wear a helmet. Like you have this ridiculous situation where children are sitting behind, where the man who's riding wears a helmet. What is he thinking? I don't know, but the wife and children don't wear helmets. So once this new road safety bill comes, there will be emphasis on prevention and the car manufacturers. So the cars that are sold in Europe and US are different. The safety standards are different in India. There's a lot of that. Once the injury occurs, we don't have first responders. In Asia and Africa, we don't have first responders. So what we've done at Apollo Hospital, through Priya, our emergency, we've trained hundreds of policemen. They are the first at the site. So train the policemen how to get them out of the car, how if a victim is lying there. That's really, really important. And now we are doing this in schools. This group, we do disaster drills. So I'm sure it hasn't been done in Kamani auditorium. So if the wall collapses or the roof collapses, there will be no disaster plan. But luckily you have a few of us trauma surgeons here. We may look after you, but there won't be a disaster plan. So we are doing this. So there's so much to be done in prevention. And then once you asked about what makes you worse. So if you've had a head or spine injury and you're just, so all trauma protocol says manage the airway, manage the breathing, then put a collar, and then how to transport a person. Because most injuries do not require, most head injuries do not require a surgeon. They just require airway, breathing, circulation, and to be handled properly and to be taken. So he's given a thumbs up. It should be thumbs down, and I'll stop. Thanks, Subra, and thank you all, and thank most of all to Raji for getting so many people, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Prakash. I think he really outlined the importance of preventing further complications arising from an existing injury. Now I'll address my next query to Dr. Kuldeep Singh. Kuldeep is an excellent plastic and reconstructive surgeon, very passionate about the comprehensive burns management and the complications which arise out of those. So Kuldeep, would you be able to address the importance of physical therapy in people who are recovering from either reconstructive surgery for burns or other conditions?
Thank you, Subra. I think the background has already been laid by the previous speakers. I always say that the end point of treatment is not healing, it is rehabilitation. You have healed, but you cannot move. You have healed, but you cannot walk. You have healed, but you cannot smile. And therefore, rehabilitation is very important. The bane of our country is we don't have specialized rehab. We have general rehab. And therefore, once you start looking at subgroups of people, children, adults, burns, trauma, you need specialized rehab because the needs of every different group of disorders or illness or injury is different, and that is a problem. Secondly, I will touch upon another aspect of rehabilitation. I met a young boy, he was 18, he had cerebral palsy, he had been through rehab, he had recovered from most of the things except he could not control his facial expressions. Now why should the face be left out of rehab? We are talking about walking, we are talking about doing things, we are talking about, but he says I cannot control my face. So we used Botox to helped relax his face, got it. He said, why has nobody for the last 15 years told me that the face also could be improved? He said, because of that, I cannot go to school, I cannot interact with people. Similarly, there are trauma patients, one of Dr. Prasad's patients. She came through a very severe head injury, a cervical spine injury. She woke up after a month, but she had half of her face completely damaged. And it took us, I think, almost 12, 13 surgeries to get her to an acceptable stage, and she went to the US to finish her master's, and she's back working. And that, I think, is composite rehabilitation. Now, to look at issues in totality, we need specialized rehab. And therefore, that should be the next step. But we are stuck at the first. We don't have basic rehab. And therefore, neuro rehabilitation and NRF plan to integrate from the basic to the most specialized in totality, have total rehabilitation. I think that is what we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuldeep. I think very well said. And there are many here who are wondering, when are we going to address the issue of Ganga? Namami Gange is what many people are here for. I can assure you that we would finish this in the next 6 minutes. We just have 2 speakers for 3 minutes each. And I think the English very cleverly introduced this term called a captive audience. So at this point in time, I guess you are captive. But I can assure you, it's for the benefit of the entire society. Our next panelist is a sports physiotherapist. She is the chief of sports physio for the Olympic gold quest. Purnima, congrats on Mary Kom winning another of her medals. Purnima has been looking after Mary Kom for a long time. I wanted you to address a very different dimension. You as a sports physiotherapist, how do you ensure that sports people do not suffer injuries? How would you say you would train them to make sure they don't hurt themselves?
Thank you so much for making me a part of this discussion. So I'm probably the most odd one out, probably dealing with athletes. I think for nearly 8 years I've been working with only athletes day in and day out. So earlier we used to have a lot of different concept about sports physiotherapists. We used to deal with injuries as and when they happened. But over the years there has been a lot of change, and we are working more on rehabilitation, as we tend to term it. We are working when we can prevent injuries, because we are dealing with athletes now. Each sport has become very high intensity, the power has increased, the speed has increased, there are bound to be injuries, recovery is not happening. I have seen over the years, all the competitions, number of competitions have increased, the levels of competition has increased. So why let them get injured when we can prevent the injuries? So it's a combination of areas where we work for preventing injuries. So as a physiotherapist, the number one thing what I ensure is my whole team is trained in a basic BLS course, at least, because we are the first responders most of the time, because most of the training, wherever, I would say 95%, 99% of the places where our athletes are training, there's no doctor around. The closest hospital might be kilometers away, because most of the athletes are coming from villages and they prefer to train at their centers. So that is the first thing what we ensure. At least we are trained in the BLS course. Secondly, we deal with a lot of athletes from different sports. So depending on the sport we work on their strength training, we work on their improving the proprioception, because you can train the mind to actually prevent these things. For example, if we do have ACL prevention, ACL injury prevention training protocols which we imply on the athletes. So where we work on their strength training, we work on their coordination, we work on their neuromuscular rehab, we work on perturbation training, we simulate the environment for them. Now with the technologies, we are having such high-ended equipments where we can simulate the training environment, where the athletes can be trained for the body can be trained to work in a certain way where the body protects itself. So I think in sports, if we can do it, I think I feel even in the normal population where we deal with elderlies, we can work on preventing injuries, for reducing the fall risks and all those kind of stuff.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
I think we can see that many of these injuries and the consequences are preventable, and I think a point very well made. Can I have some light and the camera on Sachin? Sachin, there's a question coming your way. You're one of my favorite stars. You've always been. But at the same time, though I'm extremely fond of you, you still get the same 3 minutes as everybody else did. Can I just ask you, if you were to convey 3 points to all of us, one in terms of the injury itself, 2, the complication of the injury, and 3, the rehabilitation, which is ensure that you get to the point where you are today with us.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Subra, for inviting me. It's always an honor and privilege to be with you. So, as far as the first question is concerned, for that, in a very brief, I like to tell the audience how my injury happened. So, I was holidaying in Calcutta, and I went for a morning walk with my brother-in-law. So, while coming back, I was feeling a bit sleepy, so I reclined my seat. And the first mistake that I did was I opened my seat belt up. It was a minor accident, but my head went and hit the dashboard of the car and then came and hit the head of the seat. So I had a whiplash injury, which immediately broke my C4, C5. C5 was a complete burst fracture. Then till 2.5 hours, I had no medical care. I was unconscious for about 45 minutes to 1 hour. Then probably my secondary injury was more because of the way I was handled. 2 policemen came, one of them held me from the leg, one of them held me from my hands. They carried me as if I'm a sack of a potato. There was no collar, my head was dangling down, and I was carried to a civil hospital in a PCR van, not even in an ambulance. I was lying on the floor, and when I was taken into the civil hospital, the doctor over there made me sit. Again with my neck dangling down at the back. Then again I was shifted to another hospital. Over there, only my CT scan was done. And then again I had to be shifted to another hospital, where finally my MRI was done, and they were able to find out that I had sustained a spinal cord injury. And probably by that time, 6 to 8 hours have been passed. I didn't even know that there is one very important injection which should be given to reduce the inflammation in your cord, that is methylprednisolone. I even don't know if it was injected to me at the right time or not. So, as we have discussed over here, I think the first respondents, that is our policemen, our ambulance and our fire brigade, they need to be properly trained on how to handle such kind of extreme cases. Because I have seen in most of the cases, the secondary injury causes more damage rather than the primary injury. Dr. Subra, what was your second question?
Yeah, about the value of the rehabilitation. I mean, the rehab that you had when you first started here, and the kind of rehab you had when you went to the United States.
Okay. So, along with the rehab, there are two things which go hand in hand. First of all, I consider two big circles, and in both the two circles, consider two small circles. People, one big circle is your life, and one small circle is your injury, and on the other circle, it's vice versa. The bigger one is your injury, and the smaller thing is your life. So, I had two options: whether I can live my life and let my injury be a part of it, or I can only think about my injury and let my life let my life roam around my injury. But I decided that my injury will roam around my life, but my life will not roam around my injury. So, first of all, you have to be motivated. You should not think that why it has happened to you, why has it happened, what am I going to do? What has happened, that cannot be changed. But you have to look for the future and how you can make things right. Then with that, family support is very important. I'm lucky that I have such a strong father, such strong mother, and my brother. My brother, he was ready to let go of his final year. He was doing his engineering, and he was in final year when I had my accident. He said that I can give it next year, but he needs me right now. But somehow we told him that you finished your graduation first, then obviously you can come back and look after him. So family important is very must, and there's a phrase which I always carry, like even in illness, if you replace I with we, it becomes wellness. So family support is very important. Now rehabilitation. Dr. Subra, there are two parts. People don't understand what being a fit is and what being a healthy person is. I have my certain limitations, but I'm in no way I'm sick. I'm a perfectly 28-year-old healthy guy. There are people who fell sick regularly, who have cough and cold, who get fever, they get dengue or whatever. Luckily, apart from few because of a urinary tract infection or something, I hardly get any diseases. So I'm completely healthy, and that therapy has played a very important part in that. First of all, there's a limitation that I cannot walk or anything or like that. So therapy is the only medium through which my heart is healthy. I do cardio activity. That's a very important thing in life. The kind of lifestyle we have. Even if we have to switch on the light, now we say, "Hey Google, switch on the light." So now our lifestyle has become such that there's no physical movement, there's not too much physical activity of the body, because of which we are developing too many problems young people of my age, they have diabetes, they have cholesterol problem, they have blood pressure. So rehabilitation plays a very important part. It has not only, I don't think too much about whether I am progressing, whether I am recovering further or not, but it is at least keeping me fit. That is most important to me.
I think, you have really highlighted all this very well. I think the attitude of the individual is very important. The family support is very important. And the access to good quality therapy and rehabilitation becomes extremely important. Friends, do you think we should put our hands together again for such? May I request Dr. Aruna Sharma to kindly present a small memento on behalf of the NRF to Sachin, please. I like the spirit session. I'm so glad you came all the way for this evening, and that perfectly sets the tone for what NRF is hoping to do. I'm grateful to each of our panelists for being here this evening and enlightening us on various facets of where rehabilitation is required. I'm sure NRF would love to honor all of you with a very, very small token on our behalf. Can I request you all to applaud? Oh, thank you. Thank you all for being here. And I think now we'll all get to witness that wonderful thing called Namami Gange. We have Padma Bhushan, Dr. Saroja Vaidyanathan here. I have had the privilege of watching it earlier, and I would recommend it to anybody for any number of times. It's very topical, the subject is topical, but obviously the details will come from her team. Now, before anybody physically drags me away from here, I just want you all to sit back and enjoy this wonderful evening. And I must welcome Ashok Bajpai, our Managing Director of Apollo, also here. I think it again shows our commitment to rehabilitation and total recovery. Thank you all for being here, and in the next few minutes, you will find some outstanding dance performance. Thank you.